Hi, this is Kogito, and I'm back with another Through the Ages video. So in the last video, we saw that I got second place in the second 4-player game. So right now in this group, I have only 4 points. So I'm currently 6.5 points behind both DB Starman and El Chupacabra, since El Chupacabra won the 3-player game I wasn't involved in. So I have some catching up to do, but there's still plenty of games to go, obviously. So definitely this group is still anyone can potentially win it, but I do have to lock in and, make sure to do well in my remaining games if I want to have a chance to overcome these 2 players, and also to stay ahead of Sakich, obviously. So the next game will be my first opportunity to do that. It'll be a 3-player game between me, El Chupacabra, and Sakich. So without further ado, let's take a look. In this game, I'm playing first, and we can take a look at the Leaders and Wonders. In Age 3, there's some theater synergy with Fleming, Chaplin, and Hollywood, but there's also science synergy with spaceflight, as well as Marie Curie, Einstein, and Bill Gates. In addition to the science synergy, there's Harvard College in Age 2. For the theaters, there's also Shakespeare and Bach in Stage 2. There is also Churchill, though also Gandhi, so maybe not as much military synergy in Age 3. There's also no Manhattan Project. There's, however, a Red Cross to pair with Ocean Liner Service. I would say, however, in Age 1, we can see there are a number of military leaders: Jan Žižka, Genghis Khan, Frederick Barbarossa. There's also Columbus to help with the potential colonization game, since we have Suez plus James Cook, as well as a number of good wonders in Age 1, in addition to Michelangelo plus St. Peter's, which could go with a theater synergy. So there's a lot of synergies in this game, and I think one key to this game might be figuring out which synergy you can go for, and then aiming for that in the rest of the game. As for which card to take, I think there are probably 2 major options here. I didn't really heavily consider Aristotle because I'm playing first. I think the options are pretty much between Engineering Genius and Sun Tzu. I think Sun Tzu is extremely strong in this game. There's Jan Žižka, obviously, as well as potentially Barbarossa or Genghis Khan to follow up to Sun Tzu, and he also draws you. I actually received a comment on a previous video when I mentioned Sun Tzu has synergy with Suez Canal. The reason Sun Tzu has synergy with Suez Canal is Sun Tzu draws you a whole bunch of cards, so you have a higher chance to both draw colonies that you can play, as well as draw bonus cards to win those colonies with. So I think out of all the Age A leaders, Sun Tzu is the best for potential colonization game, which is why he always needs to be strongly considered when there's a Suez Canal in the game, especially when there's Suez plus James Cook in the game. So I think Sun Tzu could definitely be a very justifiable pick here. There are a couple of reasons to pick the Engineering Genius instead. One reason was we can see Sakich, I figured, would probably pick the Library, but then El Chupacabra would get the opportunity to take Acropolis plus Engineering Genius. I think Acropolis is pretty strong in this game with all the theater synergy, so I thought that letting El Chupacabra have both the Acropolis with the Engineering Genius would be too strong for him. I also thought that there was a chance that Sun Tzu might wheel around to me. Like I said, I kind of expected Sakich to take the Library, and then El Chupacabra could potentially take Sun Tzu plus Acropolis, or maybe Sun Tzu plus yellow cards or something, but I also thought Aristotle would be much more attractive to El Chupacabra than to me, because they're playing in last position, so they have more of an opportunity to get science cards early game than me. So because of those 2 reasons combined, I valued the Engineering Genius over the Sun Tzu. It's also obviously just a pretty good card. Now, I might not get either the Acropolis or the Library, but there's also a number of good Age 1 wonders, like I said previously, so I thought there was a good chance that I would be able to use this card. Sakich notably took the Acropolis instead of the Library, but as I said, there's a lot of theater synergy in the game, so I can understand that decision. And El Chupacabra did take the Library, so we can see that the Engineering Genius would have been quite strong for El Chupacabra after all, but instead they take Aristotle, which also makes sense to me. Synergizes nicely with the Library because of the hand size and the extra science. As for my first turn, I think that it's a pretty natural turn. As I said previously, there's a lot of powerful... I think Sun Tzu should be very strong in this game, so I didn't hesitate much to take him here. Not only is he worth 1 civil action, I think he's probably better for me than either Ashoka or Homer would be, or Hippocrates, so I think this is an easy turn. Sakich built a mine. Oh, well, I built a mine too, obviously. That kind of goes without saying. Notably, Sakich takes the Iron for 3 civil actions. I was somewhat surprised by this decision. The Iron is a good card, obviously. It's pretty expensive to take it, though. Sakich, especially since Sakich is giving up a leader to take it. Now, Sakich should be able to get Hippocrates, Homer will be discarded. So Sakich will be able to get Hippocrates on the next turn, and Hippocrates, out of all the AJ leaders, Hippocrates is the most forgiving of playing him a turn late, because you will need to replace him soon anyway, so it's not as big a deal. Still, though, this is a pretty significant cost to take this for 3 civil actions. Sakic does not currently have a way to play it in 2 turns. It needs to depend on the science development to be able to play it in 2 turns. So, I guess Sakic didn't like any of the other cards on the row. An alternative might have been to increase the population and either take Homer. I probably would have taken Homer. I think Homer is good with the Acropolis because the Acropolis you can finish quickly and easily, so it's easier to use Homer's ability with the Acropolis than with any other wonder. But if Sakic values Hippocrates over Homer, then this also makes sense because there probably wasn't, you know, the alternative to this would be just to take yellow cards. El Chupacabra plays Aristotle, increases the population, builds a mine, and takes an urban growth. None of these cards are worth 3 civil actions, in my opinion, either, so that's a sensible turn, I think. Now it's my turn, unfortunately, so we can see that I drew 2 every cavalry tactics, and a bonus card, but no Crest of Seed, which is a little disappointing with Sun Tzu. I would like to start getting the event deck moving. That being said, though, getting the heavy cavalry tactics definitely stood out to me, because, of course, there's Genghis Khan in the game, and so upgrading the heavy cavalry tactic is nice, because my opponents will very likely not be able to copy it, and I will be able to get it easily with Genghis Khan. So definitely drawing these means I want to keep an eye on when Genghis Khan might be available in the row. As for this turn, though, after building the lab, there's not much else super obvious for me to do. Well, I can choose a wonder to take, and I did take the Stonehenge over the Colosseum. I think it's good to take a wonder, not really many other options. Maybe I could take the St. Peter's Basilica, but I think it's a little ambitious to take this for... Well, for 3 civil actions. I also am a huge fan of Stonehenge. It's my second favorite AJ wonder after Pyramids, so I was pretty happy to take it here. Also, the Happy Face from Stonehenge does synergize nicely with the heavy cavalry tactic potentially, although I probably will use this with Genghis Khan anyway, but maybe I won't. Anyway, that gives me 2 more civil actions to do. I could maybe increase my population, take Stockpile, but that feels really bad. Going into consumption, Stockpile is a bad card. So I think it's probably which of these cards for 2 civil actions I want to take, and that answer I think is also obvious. I take the Masonry. Obviously, I've taken Stonehenge already. Masonry pairs very well with the Stonehenge for obvious reasons. With the Stonehenge, I should have the science to support it too. So, and in addition, it's an early Masonry, so I haven't built any Age 1 urban buildings yet, so it should give me a lot of value. I discard one of these tactics and the aggression. I think that's straightforward. And I draw another bonus card, which I was happy to see for colonization purposes, and a territory, which I was happy to see for colonization game purposes, as well as a foray and an aggression. Sakic takes Hippocrates, plays him, increases the population, and builds a mine. That makes sense to me. Not much better to do in this turn, probably. Chupacabra Seeds reveals the development of religion, so unfortunately I will miss out on this, but I do have the Stonehenge to give me a happy face, so it's not a huge deal. Does they appear in this game? No, so it's pretty disappointing, but anyway, Chupacabra takes Could Have Lost for 3 civil actions, so both of my opponents took a card for 3 civil actions early in the game. I can sort of understand this. It's a good card with Aristotle, obviously, and El Chupacabra should have the science to support it. On the other hand, doing it this way means that El Chupacabra is giving up the opportunity to build a lab this turn, so they're running a bit lower in science, but they should be able to make that up with Aristotle and Library. Probably El Chupacabra didn't value any of these other cards for 2 civil actions, or maybe could have considered taking Barbarossa. I think Barbarossa is a good leader when you get him before you've built any military units. If El Chupacabra doesn't like Barbarossa in their position, doesn't want to take any of these yellow cards for 2 civil actions, I can understand the logic of there's not much better to do with the civil actions than take this Code of Laws anyway. They also, though, notably, they increased the population anyway, and taking the Code of Laws meant they couldn't build a second lab this turn. I seed the colony over the foray. Whichever one I don't seed, I'm going to have to discard at the end of my turn, because I'm keeping these bonus cards. And because there's even though the foray would probably be good for me, because with Genghis Khan and my heavy cavalry, I will almost certainly be second strongest, if not strongest, when the foray is revealed. It should be notable that as strength events go, foray is not the best one, because it also helps one of my opponents, obviously. And so because I was aiming for the Suez plus potentially James Cook, I valued getting the colony in there more. I reveal development of markets. I think I take food with it. Yeah, so I think usually you do take rocks with it. But since I have the Engineering Genius in my hand, as well as a Masonry to help save me rocks, and because I'm planning on getting this heavy cavalry tactic with Genghis Khan, who is thankfully available for me, so I will definitely take him. I valued having the food more because I wanted to be able to get this tactic going as soon as possible to start really pressuring my opponents. So with that food, I increased my population twice. This also, it leaves me open. I missed out on the development of religion, but this leaves me open for development of warfare too. And I take Genghis Khan, and I play my heavy cavalry tactic. So I think that an alternative to this turn, obviously Genghis Khan with my upgraded heavy cavalry tactic is extremely strong, so I think this is a very, I think Genghis Khan is much better than any of the other cards I could take. And if I'm taking Genghis Khan, there's not really a better way to get out of corruption than increasing my population twice. That's another reason why I took food instead of rocks, because if I took rocks, it would be a lot harder for me to get out of corruption. I think maybe I could have done it, but I would have been one resource short of finishing Stonehenge, so, yeah, I think maybe in order to take Genghis Khan this turn, I needed to take the development of food so I could get out of corruption this way. So I do think this was the best turn I could take in this situation, because I keep my bonus cards, and I draw 2 Legion Tactics and another territory. Very happy to see this. Sackage Siege reveals the development of warfare. I was happy to see this after I increased my population. Sackage finishes the Acropolis, takes a rich land and a frugality. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Maybe these cards, maybe could consider the alchemy to, but they already have the iron, so they don't need the alchemy or the irrigation. So yeah, that makes sense. Though, unfortunately, right now, the Rich Lane doesn't let them upgrade an additional iron next turn, but if a resource event is revealed, it will. Chupacabra Seeds reveals the development of planning. The options are civil life, trade routes, and science, so there is a potential resource event for Sackage. Chupacabra takes the trade routes, interestingly, instead of the development of civil life, which I usually think is the best one, but it looks like Chupacabra could potentially have played the Could Have Lost with the development of civil life, but possibly Chupacabra is playing this anyway, so it looks like Chupacabra just valued the rock and the food over the extra civil action they would get from the development of civil life. So let's see what they do in this turn. They play the Code of Laws and finish the library. So yeah, that's fair. It looks like this extra civil action they would have had if they took civil life would have only... They wouldn't have been able to do very much with it. Maybe take an urban growth or a frugality. So they would have only taken a yellow card with that extra civil action anyway. So instead taking the extra resources, which is of equivalent value to this urban growth or frugality, is sensible to me. As for me, though, first I do want to see that colony, obviously. And I reveal development of crap. So a lot of resource events now. But I definitely take the development of civil life. That will... I want to save my science, and I think I will have better things to do with my civil actions this turn as well. So with the development of civil life, I play the masonry, and then that lets me finish the Stonehenge for 2 civil actions. One weakness of doing it this way, of course, is it means that I don't use my engineering genius. But I thought that was okay. I thought that I still had a chance to use it. I could, this turn, take the Universitas to sort of guarantee me a way to use this engineering genius. Maybe I should have, in retrospect. I don't do that. Instead, I take an irrigation in a rich land. So... looking back at this now, this does seem like a mistake. I think my logic was I was a little unsure about how quickly I could finish this Universitas, because I'm still on Bronze Mines, and I've used up all my resources this turn as well. And so I didn't know if I'm probably not going to get the second copy of Iron, because El Chupacabra plays before me and doesn't have an iron. So I think my logic was I probably won't get the second copy of Iron, so the rich land will be good for me because it will let me upgrade to coals easier. And so I think the reason I did it this way was because I valued the rich land highly. It should also be mentioned that right now I don't have any technology upgrade cards in my hand, so if I don't take this irrigation, then I will be depending on getting either the second copy of Iron or the second copy of Alchemy. Now, El Chupacabra has the first copy of Alchemy, so there's a pretty good chance I should be able to get the second copy at least, but it's not guaranteed, and I also don't know when it might show up. It might not show up until the end of the age. Now, that being said, maybe it would be okay for the alchemy to show up at the end of the age, because I would be able to invest my resources in the Universitas. The irrigation, there is also synergy with the irrigation, though, because there's the ocean liner service. I won't be able to get the Machu Picchu with it, unfortunately, but there is the ocean liner service. The extra food might also help me in the short term by pushing even harder into military, to threaten my opponents even more than I'm doing right now. So, I guess it was probably a close decision. In retrospect, I at least should have, I think, considered Universitas for longer than I did. But I also think maybe Universitas is a bit of a higher upside play, perhaps, whereas this play has a higher floor because I get the rich land for that coal, as well as the irrigation, so I have something to upgrade in my next few turns. But again, maybe having the Universitas to work on would be essentially equivalent to having stuff to upgrade, so maybe I should have taken the Universitas, especially since the Universitas would also ensure that I have something to use this engineering genius on, whereas at this point I'm kinda... Okay, I guess the reason I didn't take the Universitas was because I was looking forward to there being Silk Road in the game, and since I already have the Masonry, the Silk Road would be an extremely strong wonder for me. So I think I was kind of hoping to get the Silk Road as my Age 1 wonder, and that's why I didn't take Universitas. But that's obviously risky because the Silk Road might not come out until the end of the age, I might have other important things to do, so... Yeah, I guess this is a bit of a risky play, maybe, but on the other hand, the risk is mitigated because it gives me the coal and gives me something to upgrade, so I see the logic behind this play, too. I think it's close. Just got the tactics I won't use, and I draw a plunder, which I might actually use because of how much strength I'm pushing. Sakich increases the population, takes a knight, plays it, builds a knight. Unfortunately, doesn't have a tactic, so they're still a little bit vulnerable, but they would need 2 bonus cards to defend against me, and I have 2 in my hand. But this is the best they can do. Chupacabra offers Sakich an open borders agreement. Makes sense that it wasn't offered to me, so I get it. Takes a swordsman and a theology for a happy face solution, and builds a swordsman and upgrades 2 of them, so the open borders pact is helping out Chupacabra directly right now. Still weaker than me, though, thankfully. Now, unfortunately, do I try the plunder? Yeah, I do try the plunder. So my logic behind trying the plunder is basically I don't have a card to siege, so I wouldn't be doing anything with my political action anyway. And even though, thanks to the open borders agreement, that unfortunately means the Sakich can defend against my aggression with only 1 bonus card, I thought that leeching out this bonus card from Sakich, so I figured Sakich probably would defend with a bonus card, but I thought it would be helpful to leech out that bonus card, because it would make it more likely for me to win the 2 colonies that I seeded in the deck. And it also would make it more likely for me to get another aggression against Sakich later if I draw another aggression. So even though I felt that I would probably lose this aggression, I valued getting those cards out of Sakich's hand over the military action I'm spending on it. Also notably, that empties Sakich's entire hand. This turn I take the Monarchy, so I definitely wanted to spend the signs I had. I was pretty scared of a Dark Ages. I thought that both of my opponents definitely could have seeded it, looking at the amount of science that they have. So I wanted to spend my science this turn so that I wouldn't be hit too hard by the Dark Ages, and the Monarchy was the most natural way to do it. I think it's also just good for me in general, because that extra military action will help me a lot since I'm pushing military so hard. And with Stonehenge, I have the science to afford it. So I play the Monarchy. Aside from that, there's a question of what else I want to do in my turn. There's not that many exciting cards on the hand where there is an Alchemy that I'll probably want to take, so that I'll have something else to upgrade other than the Irrigation. The Alchemy obviously also pairs very well with the Masonry, so I do take the Alchemy. As for the last 2 cards in my hand, I could take the Bread and Circuses or the Drama. There's not a lot of synergy for the Drama, though. No Bach or Marlena. The Bread and Circuses definitely needs to be considered. I didn't get the Development of Religion, so it would be pretty good for me. I do need a Happy Face solution also before the end of Age 1, even though I have the Happy Face from Stonehenge. But I decide to upgrade my lab first instead. I think it's a bit of a close decision, but we can see that this is the first copy of Bread and Circuses, so there should be one else coming. Sakich might take that copy, though. El Chupacabra has Theology, but there is also a second copy of Theology. So I figured that even if I don't take this first copy of Bread and Circuses, I will be able to get either the second copy of it or the second copy of Theology. So I wasn't too worried about my Happy Face situation for that reason, especially since I have Stonehenge. And so for that reason, I valued getting these upgrades started first earlier, getting a bit of extra, getting the science going earlier, obviously, is always nice. And I draw a Knowledge of the Ancients and another bonus card. Sakech takes Ion Ziska, so finally is able to replace Hippocrates. Actually, I think that was, yeah, so this was actually perfect timing for Sakech since Hippocrates was delayed by a turn. Sakech increased the population with Frugality, builds a second Knights. Unfortunately, we know they still don't have any tactic, but is able to take a breakthrough into reserves. Reserves a little awkward with only having 4 civil actions, but I guess there weren't better cards to take anyway, so makes sense. El Chupacabra's Seeds reveals a cultural influence. Takes an El Chupacabra now is able to take an iron for 1 civil action, so that's pretty good, even though it is the end of age 1 and hasn't started upgrading the economy yet. Still nice to have, obviously. Also takes the Cartography. I was pretty excited to see this. I would have liked the Cartography, but it is what it is. And El Chupacabra decides to play the Alchemy, take Eleanor, Elector, and builds 1, so it looks like El Chupacabra decided to start Alchemies first over Iron, which, because El Chupacabra actually never built the second lab, I understand valuing the science over the rocks in this situation. I am pretty fortunate that neither of my opponents had a tactic, though. Well, we did see that I drew both Legion tactics, so another benefit of having Sun Tzu is you can sometimes get tactics instead of... Actually, is that true? And probabilistically, actually, it probably isn't true that you reduce your opponent's chances of getting tactics. That was a dumb thing for me to say. Anyway, I saved my Knowledge of the Ancients. I reveal a territory. So I bid, I think 4 was the max I bid. 1 of my warriors plus all my bonus cards. I could potentially consider bidding 2 warriors here, or in this case, sending 2 warriors off. But I decided to just send 1. I guess the reason I would have had the rocks and the population to rebuild both warriors, so that was definitely something to consider. However, I was happy just having this 1 colony. I felt that it wasn't too necessary to keep the bonus cards for the historic territory. I mean, the historic territory would definitely be nice, but the inhabited territory is kind of doing the same thing. It means I'll be able to wait longer before my happy faces become a problem. And also, if I had to rebuild 2 of my warriors, I wouldn't be able to upgrade to my second alchemy, which I think I will do after taking this breakthrough for 1 civil action and this Code of Laws. Or, oh, actually I decided to go for a farm upgrade instead, interestingly. But this upgrade is also something I wouldn't have been able to do if I had bid 2 warriors. I think if I had bid 2 warriors and not done this upgrade, it would have been a little difficult for me to spend my civil actions even. So yeah, and just in general, I'm not sure if this territory is worth 2 population unless you want to replace your military units with other military units. So that's why I only bid 1 warrior. Anyway, I chose to upgrade. I think these 2 cards are pretty natural, especially since I'm on Monarchy. Kind of want the Code of Laws. Valuing the farm over the lab is more questionable, though, especially because my population situation is looking pretty good at the moment. I think I probably did this just because when you're on irrigations, sometimes it can be hard as a long-term food solution. So maybe I just kind of wanted to get food going earlier. Although this is also putting me at risk of rats, which I don't have knowledge of. Is there no particular reason I didn't need it to get more population? I also don't have much to do with the extra population I'm getting with this. Yeah. Maybe I did it this way just because it spends an extra civil action, right? Because I'm spending a civil action to play the irrigation upgrade instead of if I upgraded alchemies, I would only spending 1 civil action to upgrade. And I probably felt that I didn't have much better to do with that civil action, so if I had upgraded the alchemy instead, right, I would have had I could have, I could have taken maybe the patriotism or the theology, but those are both a little bit of questionable cards, I think, especially theology. Patriotism could potentially be useful for me, though, especially with being on Bronze Mines. So I could have considered upgrading the lab, and then... Oh, but if I hadn't played the irrigation, then my hand would have been full. So I probably would have had to... I would have had to, I think, play the irrigation anyway if I wanted to take these two cards, which I think they're both strong cards. So because I would have had to play the irrigation anyway as my last civil action, I was like... It was still... It felt kind of bad, I guess, playing the irrigation without upgrading, but I think in retrospect, it probably would have been better because I probably need the science earlier more than I need the food earlier. I think another part of my logic was in 2 turns, I'll have enough science for the Code of Laws anyway, so I won't need the extra science so immediately. But, and I can upgrade the lab the following turn in order to have 7 science for coal. But on the other hand, next turn I might have something else I need to do instead of upgrading this, so... Yeah, I think I probably should have upgraded the lab instead. Anyway, I draw a trade routes agreement and a vast territory, so I probably won't see this, just in case I can get it with Suez Canal. We'll see, though. Age 2 begins. Sakich finally starts upgrading their mines, takes the bread and circuses. Doing it this way means that I did give up having an Age 1 Happy Face solution, but thanks to the inhabited territory, I won't need Happy Faces for a little while anyway, so I was fine with waiting for an Age 2 Happy Face solution. And the Rich Mine does allow Sakich to get an extra mine upgrade going earlier. El Chupacabra seeds reveals an uncertain borders. I think I didn't seed this actually, so I was pretty happy to see it and win it. El Chupacabra takes the strategy for 3 civil actions, justifiable, strong cards, as well as a rich land in the reserves. El Chupacabra does not have the science to play any of these texts except the theology, which they don't need yet. So I guess that after taking the strategy, they kind of didn't have anything better to do in this turn except take cards. So a little bit of an unfortunate situation they placed themselves in. This also forces them to get corruption. So El Chupacabra maybe should have... Maybe this was a reason. So we saw that El Chupacabra played the alchemy, over the iron last turn. But one weakness of that play is we can see this turn. That means that El Chupacabra doesn't have a good way to get out of corruption. They would have to like destroy something, put in something else, which would be bad. So perhaps El Chupacabra should have played the iron last turn instead of the alchemy, because then this turn they would have been able to upgrade 2 more to iron to get out of corruption, and then they still would have had enough science to play the alchemy the following turn. So kind of have to plan your turns ahead sometimes in that way. Anyway, it's the end of... Okay, so I tried offering... I didn't want to see the vast territory, as I said previously, because I wanted to keep a territory... I was aiming for Suez Canal, so I wanted to make sure I would have a good territory in my hand to feed the Suez Canal. For that reason, I tried offering the Trader's Agreement. I obviously could definitely use this food into rocks. I tried offering it to Sakich, because El Chupacabra... honestly, neither of my opponents could really use the Trader's Agreement that much, but at least El Chupacabra is only a bronze mine, Sakich is an iron mine, so I thought maybe Sakich would be willing to take it, but they didn't, which is understandable. They don't need it. Anyway, since it's the end of Age 1, we can also take a quick look at the situation in the game. Culture-wise, El Chupacabra and I are a bit ahead of Sakich. I'm getting culture to Genghis Khan, but only by 10, so this early in the game, that doesn't really matter. As for science, El Chupacabra and I both have 1 more science income than Sakich has, but Sakich has 2 more resource income than we do, so that's about the same. I, however, have more food income, so economy-wise, Sakich and I are a bit in the lead, but El Chupacabra does have the iron that they'll be able to actually upgrade 3 the following turn, so El Chupacabra will catch up economically very soon. Civil and military action situation is roughly the same. Sakich is the only one on 4. Sakich also has to deal with their happy faces soon, but they do have a card for that. So overall, I think the situation is pretty comparable for all of us. No one is clearly in the lead or clearly behind right now, I think. Unfortunately, I mentioned before that I wanted to wait for the Silk Road to use my engineering genius on, but unfortunately the Silk Road was at the second to last card in the deck, actually. So I got a bit unlucky there, but I also set myself up to get unlucky, so that was also kind of my fault. And as a result, I ended up not being able to use my Engineering Genius. So that was a mistake on my end to sort of put myself in that situation. So in retrospect, like I said, I probably should have taken that Universitas. In any event, as for my turn after the pact was rejected, I have a little bit of a decision to make. Well, first I want to upgrade my second lab, especially because that gives me exactly 7 science to get a coal next turn if one is on the row. So definitely wanted to do this. The question is what to do with my remaining 4 civil actions. And I think that the decision partly comes down to... Well, there are a few considerations. So I could take the Silk Road now, even though I lost Engineering Genius, I still have the Masonry, so it would still be a good wonder for me. But there's a downside to taking the Silk Road now, which is I would miss out on this Rifleman. So there is the second copy of Swordsman here in the row, but because of my heavy cavalry tactic with Genghis Khan that I upgraded, I was able to be strongest in Age 1 without having any military techs, which is nice to do when you can do it. And so because now the early Rifleman is here, that means that I can just skip the Age 1 military tactic entirely and go straight to Age 2, which Age 2 military tactics are much better than Age 1 ones because you can use them for Age 3 military tactics. So I definitely wanted this copy of Rifleman to make sure I got it. I thought it would be very strong for me. But that means that I don't have enough civil actions to take the Silk Road. So I think my options here are I could either take the Great Wall or I think do what I ended up doing, which was take an Engineering Genius and increase my population. I think there are considerations for each one. So obviously the Great Wall would be a good wonder for me. Well, right now it would be with my soldiers. However, the weakness of Genghis Khan obviously is that the main weakness, in my opinion, is when you lose Genghis Khan, it can be difficult to keep your heavy cavalry tactic going, and I'm kind of in this situation right now. So probably what I would really like to do is, well, if I either draw a good H2 tactic I can transition into, or if I don't, ship these warriors off to a colony and replace them with cavalrymen instead. And so if I do that second option of getting cavalrymen instead, then the Great Wall would actually not be doing very much for me. I was also a little worried about taking the Great Wall that costs 9 resources when I am still on Bronze Mines, and in the short term, I would prefer to spend my resources probably not on the Great Wall, but on upgrading coal mines. And if I wait until I finish upgrading my mines to coal mines, then it'll be a long time before I can even finish the Great Wall. And especially since I'm aiming for the Suez Canal, I didn't want to clog my wonder space up with a wonder that I don't know how fast I'll be able to complete it when I would definitely want to take the Suez Canal as soon as it's available on the row. So I think that's the reason why I did it this way instead. However, there is a downside to doing it this way, which is I clog up my hand. Currently my hand is full, as a matter of fact. Now, I wasn't too worried about this, I think, when I made this play, because I figured, well, next turn I can just play the Code of Laws with the Breakthrough, and that'll open up 2 spaces in my hand and give me 6 total, so it won't be a problem to use up hand spaces. But I think there's a bit of a spoilers maybe, but I didn't consider enough the fact that my opponents were heavily incentivized to see Dark Ages because I had the Stonehenge, and as we will see, the Dark Ages might ruin my day if it gets revealed. Might. Anyway, I draw an aggression, I draw another territory, I think the strategic territory, so that was nice to draw another one that I could put into Suez, as well as a bonus card, so I was happy to see these draws at least. Sakach Seeds, and the historic territory seed is revealed. I am willing to bid that bonus card I just drew. I don't have knowledge of any other territories on the deck right now, and obviously the more territories I have for potential Suez, the better. So I was happy to win this. It was definitely fortunate of me to draw this bonus card early enough that I could put it into this historic territory. Sakach fixes the happy face problems, increases the population, maybe a sign that there's rats on the deck, but Sakach could also just be afraid of rats. It also lets them build a warrior this turn. And plays Amped. Okay, so definitely Sakach gets a very strong turn going, because Sakach, well, I was fortunate to draw that bonus card during my first draw. Sakach was fortunate to draw the Napoleonic army in their first draw, and this is absolutely perfect for them, because Yanziska lets them use their farms as artillery, and even though they're on the 4-strength version of Napoleonic army, because the farms only count as AJ artillery. That's still enough to give them an 8-strength bonus from their tactics with these 4 units, which puts them up to 16 strength. So much less previously, maybe I was threatening my opponents. Now I'm being threatened militarily by Sakich. So that is definitely worrying, especially after I already put a bonus card away to a colony. So this scared me a little bit. As for the last of action, they take the cultural heritage. Maybe the swordsman could have been considered, because the first copy of Rifleman is already out, and once Sakich is off of Yanziska, they will need to upgrade these warriors in order to get the upgraded version of the Napoleonic army tactic. So the swordsman maybe would have been better than the cultural heritage here, especially since Sakich is only got 4 civil actions still, so this is a pretty civil action heavy card to take. But it is also true that because I took the Rifleman and they play before El Chupacabra, they have a higher chance than El Chupacabra does of getting the second Rifleman. El Chupacabra seeds reveals that Dark Ages. So, as I mentioned previously, I think that when I took my turn, I didn't consider strongly enough the possibility that this could be in the deck, because, as I said, since I had Stonehenge, my opponents both had very good reason to see the Dark Ages. And they both kind of played knowing that the Dark Ages was in the deck too, or at least suspecting that it was. So I didn't properly consider that on my turn, and as we can see, that will significantly mess me up. Anyway, El Chupacabra does that 3 iron upgrades play I mentioned earlier, and takes a Republic, maybe planning to do a Revolution next turn. A Republic a little nervous making, because their 3rd military action is from this pack that will expire at the end of Age 2. So with the Republic they will, but they also have the strategy, so the Republic is definitely good because they have the strategy. Anyway, that Dark Ages, unfortunately, well, I do see that vast territory now that I drew the strategic territory for Suez Canal. It was a little risky of me to seed this because I'm the weakest, but I also thought that maybe, but I wanted to get that colony in the deck because I'm aiming for Suez, so I was willing to take that risk. I reveal an event that does nothing, but yeah, we can see that I now have a problem here, because the Dark Ages took me from 7 to 5. I am now 1 sign short of playing that Code of Laws, which was my plan on the previous turn. So, because of that Dark Ages, taking this Engineering Genius ended up being pretty bad for me because of how much it's clogging up my hand. This turn, I cannot play any of these 4 cards. I can thankfully at least play the Rich Land because I have the second farm upgrade to do. That's not something that I love doing because it means I can't use it on the coal. But on the other hand, as we'll see, I'm not gonna take the coal anyway. If I hadn't clogged up my hand, well, and the Dark Ages hadn't come out, then I would have been able to play the coal this turn. But I'm in a situation where after doing this upgrade and then I can increase my population, I'm kind of stuck in terms of things to do with my civil actions. I'm going to be spending 2 rocks to rebuild my warrior, obviously, so that I'm not so far behind in strength. And at that point, I will not have enough rocks or after popping enough food to do anything. So I'll basically have 3 civil actions, and the only thing I can do is take exactly 1 card because my hand is clogged. So that Dark Ages was definitely extremely bad for me, and that's why I said I should have considered it more strongly when I did my previous turn. Regrets aside, though, I need to figure out how best to play this turn. And, as I said, the question is, which of these cards on the road do I want? Because I can only take 1 of them. The coal is worth considering, but unfortunately, in order to have the hand space for the coal in the first place, I need to play the Rich Land. But after playing Rich Land and then upgrading my warrior, I will only have 5 rocks next turn, which is 1 rock short of upgrading to coal mines. So even if I did take this copy of coal, I wouldn't be able to actually upgrade to a coal mine next turn even with it. And so for that reason, I thought that it wasn't worth it to take the coal. Because next turn, I wouldn't really have a reason to play it. I mean, unless there's a resource event revealed, but I can't count on that. I didn't see any. So, I figured that at this rate it was looking to be a little while before I would be able to have the leeway, because I had to play the rich land this turn to take any card at all. It would be a little hard for me to build up the rocks to get the coal. And so, instead of taking the coal, I took the Wave of Nationalism. I thought that probably next turn I was going to play the Rifleman, because Sakich is threatening so much strength. I mean, right now, I'm vulnerable to an aggression, right? I just am. There's nothing I can do about it. But, I mean, I'm 8 strength behind Sakich. Sakich can absolutely try an aggression against me, and it will almost certainly succeed. I need to draw 2 bonus cards. I need to have 2 bonus cards in my hand to defend. So there's nothing I can do about it this turn, but at least next turn I will be able to challenge Sakich in strength by building Rifleman. And so for that reason, I wanted the Wave of Nationalism, because it would let me get another Rifleman. Now, it is true that I might only be able to get 3 rocks out of it, because I'm currently higher in strength than El Chupacabra. But I thought that El Chupacabra may be able to get more in strength than me. I mean, there's no obvious way to do it this turn, since I guess El Chupacabra doesn't have any Age 1 cards, so they can't have a tactic for these swordsmen. And even if they increase the population, I would be unhappy. But they could maybe potentially build a theology, which would let them build a 4th swordsman if they're really worried about. But I guess it wouldn't make a difference to aggression from Sakich anyway. So it looks like I will probably be stronger than El Chupacabra. I mean, maybe I can find a way to like destroy a warrior to then get weaker, but or get rid of a warrior, but that's speculative. At the very least, though, it will give me 3 rocks, and even though taking and playing Wave of Nationalism, spending 3 civil actions on it for only 3 rocks is not generally where you want to be. It is at least better than nothing, and it might be important for me, like I said, to defend myself against potential aggressions. So I thought that the Wave of Nationalism was much better for me short term than the coal, and in the long term, I could get the 2nd copy of coal, or maybe potentially, because I'm still aiming for Suez Canal. Right now, the Suez Canal would be giving me 3 resource boost. So even if I don't upgrade to coal, at the current point in time, the Suez Canal would give me +3 rocks anyway. So maybe potentially I could just subsist off of bronze mines for the rest of the game. Especially since I did actually find a way to use my last civil action here, which was to build a 4th bronze mine. This is the 2nd game in a row that I built 4 mines. We saw that in the previous game, it did not work out well for me. I think in this game, it's a much different set of considerations. First of all, because I have these early irrigations, and because I got this inhabited territory, and because there's a vast territory in the deck that I may be able to win, I think that I definitely have enough free population to be able to justify this 4th mine. That's not the problem. So the question is will it provide a good benefit for me? And I think it will, because like I said, I chose to take this Wave of Nationalism over the coal, and this is basically me saying I at least accept the risk of never upgrading my mines in this game ever. And if I'm not ever upgrading my mines, then the difference between 3 and 4 resource production could actually be pretty big. And even though I will get extra resources from the Suez Canal, obviously, like, the more resource production you can have, the better. And the final reason why I thought this was a good way to play is, again, I don't have anything better to do. I mean, I could have used my civil actions by taking the Statue of Liberty, but again, I have no idea. Even with the Engineering Genius, this would be really expensive for me to complete. I don't know if I'll have an opportunity to complete it anytime soon, and I really want to leave my wonder slot open for that Suez Canal, which I'm kind of depending on at this point. So I didn't want to occupy my wonder slot with the Statue of Liberty, and given that, I had this extra civil action, and instead of just passing my turn and doing nothing, I thought that spending that civil action... So in other words, this was kind of a free civil action, because if I didn't do this, I would do literally nothing with that civil action. And in addition, I have the free population to do it, and because there's a good chance I will never upgrade my mines in this game, that extra 4th bronze mine might end up being really good for me. So I actually think in retrospect, this was the right play, and unlike in the previous game where I think it was wrong, in this game, I think is actually the relatively rare situation where building a 4th mine is correct. I'm actually pretty proud of doing that, now that I look at it again. Anyway, I draw war on territory and another aggression. Sakich does indeed do an aggression, and it is the worst one for me. So Sakich definitely got some great draws, but I got that early bonus card draw, so I can't complain too much. Regardless, though, this draw is obviously extremely... This aggression is very good for Sackage. It gets an inhabited territory for me. At least it's an H1 territory and not an H2 territory, so it's not as bad as it could be, as I've had worse annexes against me before, but this is still pretty bad, especially because part of the reason why I built that 4th mine was because I thought that the territory would give me the free population to do it. Now, maybe that 4th mine is looking a little... more costly. Anyway, this is definitely the right play for Sackage to do, no doubt. Sackage takes the cannons and a scientific method and plays the cultural heritage, so it doesn't... Sackage chooses to play the cultural heritage this turn instead of upgrading the last mine. That's a little questionable to me. Well, I mean, taking it in the first place, I think, was a little questionable, but I feel like upgrading the mine, which is something that you definitely want to do sooner than later, is better than just playing the culture heritage this turn than doing nothing else. I mean, you can always play the culture heritage next turn, and you'll need to do this at some point, so I think this mine upgrade should have been done. Chupacabra takes Nobel for 3 civil actions, so Chupacabra clearly values Nobel a lot. I mean, there's other good leaders too, I think. Maybe not great. I mean, Newton... Well, Newton might actually be good, because going from 3 to 4 science production is actually pretty big. So I think Newton would also have been pretty good. I guess none of the others... I mean, maybe Robespierre for Republic Revolution would have also been good for El Chupacabra. I don't know, 3 civil actions in Nobel. Maybe El Chupacabra just didn't have much better to do with the civil actions, though. It is also true that with Eleanor, this civil action cost is a lot easier to bear because Eleanor will refund them. So I understand that. Well, we'll refund 2 of them. We'll refund 2 of them. So I guess I understand that for that reason. I guess we're from 3. So El Chupacabra was a 2, and then... Oh, right. So it cost 1 civil action to play it, and then got 3 back. So anyway, El Chupacabra increases the population, takes a selective breeding, plays the reserves for rocks, which lets them build a 2nd temple, interestingly. I'm also not too sure about this, especially since the rebellion was already revealed. There's no event cards coming anytime soon, except maybe this one, but that's still unlikely that this specifically will be an Unhappy Worker Punish event. So I think having this Unhappy Worker would have been totally fine for El Chupacabra, and there was no good reason about it. I guess El Chupacabra's hand is full, though, and they, I guess, didn't want to play the theology. Probably is saving up the science, maybe wants to save up the science for the strategy, for example. I guess that's another reason that El Chupacabra got Nobel, because they have a lot of text in their hand and only 3 science production, so going from 3 to 5 is actually really valuable for them. So I understand taking Nobel for that reason. Anyway, though, as for this civil action, probably they are planning on playing the strategy next turn, and so didn't want to spend the science on the theology, and so since their hand is full, they didn't have anything else to do with the civil action anyway other than build the temple, and so this will at least give them some extra culture. Still a little bit of an unfortunate turn for El Chupacabra, though. As for my turn, so unfortunately, El Chupacabra is being tied with me with strength is not enough for me to lose the bonus. Now, looking at this again, though, maybe I should have disbanded a warrior, actually. I think I didn't consider this during the game, but looking at it now, I actually think it would have been better to disband a warrior so that I would get 6 resources from this wave of nationalism, and then I could just build a rifle. Well, actually, no, that doesn't make sense because... Well, it gives me 1 resource because I'm sacrificing the 2 rocks from disbanding the warrior, so it would only give me 1 extra resource if I disbanded the warrior here, and that probably is not worth the military action. We'll see what my rock situation is like. I do want this cavalryman. Oh, right. Actually, since I'm building a cavalryman, well, I'm building the cavalryman instead of the rifleman, right? Because I'm planning for my post-Genghis Khan life here. Given that, it would have been better to disband the warrior, right? Because I'm not upgrading to rifleman, I'm playing cavalryman. So this 3rd warrior isn't really doing anything for me. And so by disbanding it, I would have had more rocks. I would have had 3 extra rocks here, so we're at 5. On the other hand, I would have then been in corruption. Yeah, so I would have had 3 extra rocks, but then I would have been in corruption, so I'd have had to find somebody to spin them. I'm 1 food short of increasing my population, and I don't have any other way to spend my rocks. Yeah, okay. So because I would have been in corruption if I had just been as a warrior and gotten. Well, actually, wait. No, because I would have had I would have had an extra pop, so I would have been able to build 2 cavalrymen. Yeah, okay. So that was wrong, I think. I should have disbanded a warrior to get Wave of Naturalism for 6 rocks, which would have let me build 2 cavalrymen. So that was a mistake. Anyway, doing all that, used up 4 civil actions, and I have 1 left. I can't really do anything except take one of these cards. And it's probably, yeah, I took the breakthrough. Now, the efficient upgrade could have been considered because it would have helped me with potential coal upgrades, right? But as stated previously, at this point, I was kind of thinking maybe I just won't upgrade coals at all, and I'll just depend on my 4 bronze mines plus the Suez Canal for my resource production. And so because of that, because I felt there was a good chance I just wouldn't ever upgrade coals, I valued the breakthrough over the efficient upgrade. I could have potentially considered the urban growth, but I also don't know when I'll be able to think about urban growth. I'm having kind of hand size issues right now, even still. So the next turn I might play the Code of Laws, but the breakthrough is a much easier card to play than the urban growth. I'll be able to use it next turn immediately when I play one of these techs, probably the Code of Laws, and the extra science will also, even though I'm on for science protection, I mean that's gonna start being not that great pretty soon. So I think the extra science will definitely be helpful for me. Oh yeah, I didn't see the territory because I wanted to keep it for Suez Canal, and I didn't bother offering the trade routes agreements instead, again, a second time. So I discard that in one of my aggressions, and I draw freedom of movement and another territory. Unfortunately, I didn't draw any bonus cards, and I'm only on 11 strength, so Sakic is able to get a... Oh no, sorry, this isn't against me, this is against Chupacabra. Yeah, so it looks like I increased my strength enough that Sakic didn't want to risk an aggression against me when I could have easily defended it with 1 bonus card. I don't have 1, but Sakic didn't know that. Instead, Sakic played the Infiltrate against El Chupacabra, killing Nobel. So that's definitely also very justifiable. Infiltrate would have been... Well, it would have been pretty bad for me too, right? Because of... I would have lost this heavy cavalry tactic, but it's also obviously quite bad for El Chupacabra because not only does it cost them the strength and the science boost, but it also means there will be no Nobel prizes in this game. So I definitely understand aggressing El Chupacabra there. So Sakic has gleaned a lot of value out of this early Napoleonic army. Anyway, Sakic is able to upgrade twice to scientific methods. Maybe this was why Sakic didn't upgrade their... I guess in retrospect, this is why Sakic didn't upgrade their mine last turn, because they were looking forward to doing this play next turn. And so this gives them just enough science and resources. They wouldn't have had enough resources to upgrade 2 scientific methods if they had upgraded the mine last turn, because then this turn they would have had to play the cultural heritage and then the lab. So the reserves, they didn't have enough civil actions to play. So if Sakic valued the scientific method this turn over the extra resource income last turn, then this play makes sense. Personally, I would value the extra resource income more just because Sakic is going to be fine in terms of science income now for the rest of the game with the scientific methods. And so when you're on age 1 rock and age 2 science, I think the rock is more valuable to you than the sciences. But now Sakic just played last turn makes a lot more sense to me though. Anyway, Sakic does take the efficient upgrade. This at least they will be able to use on that last ion upgrade. Chupacabra now sees, notably, even though they're weakest, reveals a scientific breakthrough, so that infiltrate cost them pretty severely, because they lost out an extra 2 science from this as well. Sakic gets the most from it. Maybe Sakic also did that play because they seeded the scientific breakthrough. So, yeah, that seems likely, right? Sakic seeded the scientific breakthrough, so they wanted to get those lab upgrades going before it was revealed, and they also wanted to assassinate Nobel before it was revealed. So that doesn't make sense to me. Now, that said, the scientific breakthrough does give El Chupacabra enough science to play the Republic this turn peacefully. They also take the Ocean Liner Service. That makes sense to me. There's still a couple turns left in H2, so it's definitely still early enough for this to provide them a lot of value. they will even be able to complete it this turn. So, strong turn from Uchupacabra. Uchupacabra was kind of suffering from that infiltrate, but I think getting the Ocean Liner service going immediately and the Republic going immediately is a very nice consolation prize for them. As for my turn, though, so I ceded the freedom of movement. I think that was a very good draw for me because I will be able to use it to put one of these warriors into cavalrymen. I reveal knowledge of the ancients, so everyone gets a little bit extra science, and I have a ton of science at least. So I definitely want to finally play that Code of Laws. As for the rest of my turn, I have some decisions to make. Let's see here. Unfortunately, there isn't a coal on the row. If there was, I would actually be able to upgrade with my mine, so I probably would have done that if the coal was available, but unfortunately it isn't. Suez Canal is also not available on the row, so none of the cars that I really want are on the row. So instead I have to decide as sort of consolation prizes what I want to do with this turn. I think there are a lot of options here. Not these leaders though, I'm not set up for them. Let's see what I end up doing. So I do increase my population. I kind of need to do that, and I think I build a second cavalryman. Well, I take a navigation, yeah. So navigation, I think, is a strong card for me. Because of that scientific breakthrough and the knowledge of the ancients, I now have sort of a surfeit of science. So I figured I had enough science to be able to afford this navigation. I know there's a vast territory in the deck that I seeded, and I probably will seed one of these colonies too later, whichever one I decide I don't want to put into Suez. And so because of that, and because I'm aiming for Suez in the first place, I thought that the navigation would be a good card for me. It also helps me with my strength situation by playing it this turn. It means that I am now guaranteed to defend against Sakich aggressions. So I think that the navigation is definitely right to take here, or almost certainly right. So that then leaves me with 2 more civil actions to go. I still need to get out of corruption, and I decide to, well, I take the team sports. Right, so pretty soon, my next population will be unhappy. So I will finally need a happy face solution pretty soon. Team sports is a very powerful, a very good happy face solution. There's no Pierre in the deck, in the game, but it's still, since I don't have a religion, I think the team sports is much better than the organized religion. So I wanted to have this in my hand to make sure I have a happy face solution. I will need it soon. So that gives me 1 civil action left. I get out of corruption by the cavalryman. I could have potentially built a 3rd alchemy instead, but I think it's definitely better to have the cavalryman. It now ties me in strength with Sakich, which means that if Sakich doesn't do anything about strength, also Sakich is gonna have to do something about strength pretty soon, because Jan Ziska is gonna run out pretty soon. And so, I figured that tying Sakich in strength means that next turn if Sakich doesn't do anything, I will be strongest when I seed. And in addition, I just thought that my population situation isn't looking too great at the moment. I will need the second cavalryman pretty soon, by next turn probably anyway. Well, I know... Well, okay, this is a freedom of movement. I don't know what card this one is. I figured that there was a good chance I would need my 3rd cavalryman next turn if I got... I was aiming for James Cook, obviously, but I will probably will replace Genghis Khan next turn, meaning that, like I said, I will want a 3rd cavalryman, and so doing it this way, I will have just enough rocks next turn to build a 3rd cavalryman. Whereas if I had built this 3rd alchemy, obviously I wouldn't have had the population or the rocks to build a 3rd cavalryman. So I do think this was better than the alchemy, just because I need to set myself up for post-Genghis Khan life. That being the case, I have 1 civil action left, and I think the frugality is the best card to take. I mean, journalism, maybe it only costs 7 due to masonry, but because I lost that inhabited territory, my population situation isn't looking the best at the moment, also since I had the 4th mine, obviously. So I figured that chances weren't great that I would be able to get this journalism. Now, Newton is in the game, as well as spaceflight, so it definitely should be strongly considered. But I just didn't see myself really being in a position to get journalism anytime soon. Whereas, because I was worried about my population situation, I thought the frugality could potentially be a very important card for me. Discarded the aggression. I could have considered discarding the war, but, yeah, actually, this war, like, I could maybe look to do a war against El Chupacabra at some point, but El Chupacabra doesn't have any blue text for me to steal. I already have a Code of Laws, and they also don't have much science income, so maybe I should have discarded the War of Technology, because it looks unlikely that I'll really be able to use it, and kept the aggression. Anyway, I ended up drawing a Civil Unrest and another bonus card, which is nice to have. Sakich actually does a war, a better war, probably, the War on Territory against El Chupacabra. Is able to play Constitutional Monarchy this turn, finally finishes upgrading their mines, takes a Cavalryman. Even though they have Knights, I mean, obviously it needs this for Age 3 tactics, although Sakich already has a pretty good Age 2 tactic going right now, although they will need that Rifleman in order to in order to get this going really strongly. But I guess Sakich valued this Cavalryman. I mean, the Breakthrough might have been nice, but they do have a lot of science. Maybe they could have played a Reserves and increased population or something. One of these blue techs could have also potentially been good, but I do understand maybe Sakich was worried that they will miss out on the Rifleman, and so figured that having the Cavalryman for potential Age 3 tactics is even more important for that reason. El Chupacabra is able to take a cannon, so I unfortunately am missing out on cannons, although with an upgraded heavy cavalry tactic, I should be able to subsist on this for at least a little while into Age 3. Anyway, El Chupacabra plays the cannon, builds one, takes a revolutionary idea, and a breakthrough, increases the population, goes to Ocean Line of Service, and takes architecture. Unfortunately, they still don't have a tactic, and it's almost on the day of Age 2, so that's definitely quite unlucky on El Chupacabra's part. At least the cannon means they will only lose 2 yellow tokens to Sakich. Still hurts a fair amount, but with the Ocean Line Service, losing the yellow tokens is less of an issue. So it's not too bad for El Chupacabra. Still not where you want to be, though, obviously. I ended up seeing the strategic territory. I valued the territory over the Civil Unrest because the Suez Canal is finally on the road, and in this slot, too, which is lucky for me. So now I'll be able to get the Suez Canal. And so for that reason, you know, I have the cartography, I have the bonus card. I figured there was a good chance I would be able to win that strategic territory, and I wanted it in the deck for my Suez Canal to get as big as it can be. I reveal a Raiders, which does not hit me because of that second Cavalryman I built, so that ended up being quite important for me. I do obviously take that Suez Canal as an extraordinarily important card for me, especially since, again, looks like I will be on Bronze Mines for the rest of the game. It's also very important to take the Suez Canal this turn because it means I can play this Engineering Genius before the age ends. Now, that leaves me with 2 civil actions left. I do need to get out of Corruption now, too, though. How do I get out of Corruption? I'm building another stage of the Suez Canal, right. So, I needed to, the age will definitely end before my next turn, so I need to play the Engineering Genius this turn, or it will be gone. And so, because I played it this turn, in order to get out of Corruption, I mean, I could have, I didn't have the Roxy with another Cavalryman, so there's basically no other way, or no other remotely good way to get out of Corruption than building the second stage. But the unfortunate thing about that is it leaves me with an extra civil action now, and not much to do with it. Because kind of none of these cards I want. Justice System, I already have Code of Laws. Architecture, I already have Masonry. Selective Bidding, I already have Irrigation. Scientific Method, I already have Alchemy. So I didn't want any of these, so I ended up just taking the coal. I mean, I almost certainly won't actually play this coal. I mean, I can't play it next turn anyway. I don't have the rocks to upgrade. And then 2 turns from now, it'll be 2 turns into Age 3. It'll be, I think, way too late to get coals going, and I'll just, again, subsist on these plus the Suez Canal. So, it's not a, it's definitely a bad card to take in this situation. But because I had to spend my previous civil actions taking and building the Suez Canal, it's maybe a better card than any of these other cards. Yeah, I could have considered... I mean, it's not even really a cut consideration either, because I don't need to... Well, maybe I could have taken architecture, because architecture could potentially be good for Sakich, right? Because Sakich has the science for it with the scientific methods, and their sort of weakness right now, well, other than food, unfortunately, the selective breeding is going to be discarded on my turn. So, Sakich, because I can't remember if the selective breeding was on the road during Sakich's turn. If it was, then Sakich maybe should have taken it, but I can't remember if it was. It might have just been because Chupacabra took a lot of cards. Maybe. Anyway, unfortunately, Sakich will miss out on the selective breeding, regardless of what I do. But maybe the architecture would be good for them because their science situation looking good. They're only on Iron Mines and they upgraded them late, so they are suffering a little bit in terms of resources. So the architecture might actually be a pretty good card for them, and it could maybe be a decent card for me. I mean, I do have the masonry, but you know, I'm also a little bit suffering in terms of resources. So the architecture maybe I would have had a slightly higher chance of playing it than the coal. But on the other hand, I mean, maybe if like a resource event gets revealed soon, although I will be spending my resources next turn on the Suez Canal. Yeah, I think maybe the architecture is slightly better than taking the coal, but probably both of them are like bad cards to take. So it's like which one is slightly less bad. Anyway, I discard. This I think was definitely a mistake though, because as I said previously, it doesn't look like a War of Tech against El Chupacabra would accomplish much anyway, and so this is kind of a useless card, and I should have kept the Civil Unrest, I think. Anyway, I draw 2 bonus cards and another war in territory. So Sakich gets 2 yellow tokens from El Chupacabra, and they get a successful plunder as well, though for resources instead of food. So unfortunately, Sakich did miss out on the selective breedings, meaning that they are now subsisting on agricultures, but at the very least, they got that war in territory. They also got this inhabited territory from me, so they got a lot of bonus yellow tokens, which offsets that to some extent. To take Newton is definitely a powerful leader for them in this situation. Of course, losing Ian Ziska kills their strength a lot, but they are able to build 1 more cannons at least, so they are now only 1 point of strength behind me. And they do take that architecture. I chose not to take on the previous turn after all. And they even play it, so yeah, it looks like I should have taken the architecture as a hate draft. Anyway, they also take an opera, notably, but there is a Hollywood as well as Chaplin and Fleming, so definitely the opera could be a good card to have, especially with the architecture, right? And they take reserves. They choose to take this reserves instead of playing this reserves. So they're basically spending 1 civil action for 1 resource, right? Because they're losing this copy of reserves. So they could have spent the civil action playing this copy of reserves instead. So I think playing this was better than taking this, because 1 civil action is not worth just 1 more rock or food. They won't even need it to get like an extra population or anything next turn. H3 begins. A lot of stuff happens on this text box. I ended up actually not getting an H2 leader because I was spending the entire age waiting for James Cook. And sadly for me, because of the way that Sakich played the turn, James Cook is going to be discarded before my turn. So kind of unfortunate. Chupacabra offers an international trade agreement to Sakich, so this is the second pact in this game I am not a member of, sadly. Takes an organized religion, so they can play it with the revolutionary idea, so they can finally fix the happy face situation. And takes the rifleman, so unfortunately Sakich missed out on this, as said previously. If they had taken the swordsman instead of, I forget what they took instead of the swordsman, but yeah, this was the risk that Sakich played by not taking the swordsman, that they would lose out on that second copy of rifleman. As well as a rich land. I guess they're playing using selective breeding. I mean, they will need this when their yellow bank gets into this area, so fair enough. So, as I said, now we can take a quick look at the situation of the game after... I guess it's fair to wait after I built Suez Canal. So, in terms of culture, I am ahead by a little bit, especially ahead of Sakich, thanks to all those turns I played with Genghis Khan. Now that Genghis Khan is gone, that, you know, I'll have to find some other way to start building up culture. Sakich, while being behind in culture, though, is far ahead in both science and also resource production. Notably, El Chupacabra, El Chupacabra took the strength, took the food production from the international trade agreement so that they won't have famine this turn. So Sakich is ahead of both of the other two players in terms of both science and resources. But their major problem is their food situation because they missed out on both irrigation and selective breeding. So they're kind of depending on the Age 3 food building, the mechanized agriculture, if they want to get much more population than this one. As for civil and military actions, El Chupacabra has 2 more civil actions than the other 2, but they have less military actions, so that's kind of a wash. Sakich is a little bit ahead. In terms of strength, also, Sakich is currently the strongest because I lost Genghis Khan, and I won't be able to rebuild that on my turn, so... Overall, the situation still looks pretty equal. I think economically, Sakich is definitely ahead, again, especially in science, but also in rock production and strength, but their food situation is a huge drag on their position. In terms of culture, I'm a little bit ahead, but that El Chupacabra will catch up to me soon. So I think that I will at least be able to get more rock production with my Suez Canal. So I think, just like at the end of Age 1, I don't really see any player being particularly ahead or particularly behind at the beginning of Age 3. I think we all have strengths and weaknesses to our positions, and so the winner of this game will be who can navigate Age 3 the best, given their strengths and weaknesses. Anyway, I definitely want to finish the Suez Canal as soon as I can to get the extra rock protection going. I am able to colonize that wealthy territory with it, which is very important because it means that I am able to build this arena that's getting out of rebellion. And, well, I also take Catherine, so I missed out on James Cook, which is very sad. Catherine is at least a decent replacement. She'll give me an extra 2 culture production, which is not nothing, and her ability could definitely be quite helpful for me because I lost that inhabited territory. My Yellow Banks is not looking great right now. So Catherine is pretty good for me, even though I would have preferred James Cook. I could have considered destroying a warrior and building a 3rd cavalryman to make me strongest, but I think that all of these, 3 of these 4 cards were seeded by me, and I know that none of them are strength events. And the remaining 2 cards we can see were seeded by El Chupacabra, and El Chupacabra very likely did not seed strength events, right? So I figured that odds are none of these cards are strength events, and so I didn't see a need to really push strength that much soon. Now, maybe it could have been nice to do to make it more likely that I'll be stronger than El Chupacabra, and possibly even Sakich for Catherine's ability, but I also wanted to keep these warriors around because I know this is a vast territory that I want to win, and there's a strategic territory here. So I also wanted to keep these warriors around to send off to colonies. So I was fine just doing it this way. Yeah, I think this is a good turn. I draw a War of Culture, an Armed Intervention, and an Impact of Harmony. This is at least a... It might be good for me if I get extra population because I have 6 in farms and mines. But I only have 3 in urban buildings, so it might be hard for me to get this up to 6, but it should at least be a seedable event for me. Sakich Seeds reveals an emigration, so this was the card that El Chupacabra seeded, and they actually are the only one who gets hit by it, so that's kind of funny. Pretty bad for El Chupacabra, but not the end of the world because they have Ocean Liner Service. Sakich does take the satellites. They do have the science to afford it, so I understand that. They also, because I played the navigation, they can reasonably expect there to be more colonies in the deck, so that makes sense on their end. They also take the oil, though. Well, they don't have the science for oil this turn, but the weakness of playing the satellites this turn is they won't have the science for oil next turn either. So I think this oil would have made sense if they were planning on upgrading oils next turn, right? But because Soccer played the satellites this turn, that means they probably, unless they have knowledge about one of these events, maybe they played a Cold War. And they were hoping for the Cold War. But that's still, like, what are the chances that, like, one of these cards specifically will be revealed by their next turn? And so, without, like, a Cold War, they won't be able to play Oil next turn. They would have to wait until the following turn, and by then we're already pretty deep into Age 3, and probably too late for the Oil to be a good card to play. So I think, in my opinion, Sokich probably should have decided on either the satellites or the Oil, and not both. Anyway, Sokich does play reserves for food, which lets them increase their population again, that they could put into a second cannon, so at least they are really threatening strength again. Chupacabra Seeds, notably. I guess they probably expected that because I didn't push strength, that probably wasn't a strength event, and they wanted this card in the deck. Anyway, the Vast Territory is revealed. Thankfully, I am able to win it, even though Sokich played the satellites this turn. For 2 warriors, I don't need the warriors anymore because I'm moving to cavalryman. So I was willing to. So I thought that the extra warrior was better. That this bonus card was more important than the second warrior would have been. So I put 2 warriors into it. Definitely very, very good for me to win this vast territory after losing Inhabited. My yellow token situation, yellow bank is looking a lot healthier now. Chupacabra takes Marie Curie. I guess planning on computers with it. Yeah, well, Chupacabra lost Nobel, so they kind of were heavily incentivized to get a second leader, an Age 4 leader early. So that's why they want to win this turn. Now, there is also Bill Gates plus computers on the row, notably. And so I think Chupacabra should have heavily considered that instead. It would have taken more civil actions. Let's see what they use those civil actions on. Oh, there's a second copy of Oil that they can take for Marie Curie. And they can even play an upgrade once, as well as build a warrior. Kind of an interesting warrior. Maybe they expected that I had a Freedom of Movement. I mean, Freedom of Movement would be good in my situation, but you also didn't know that I drew it, so... A little bit confused about this warrior, but maybe they did protect the Freedom of Movement. Regardless, though, I was the one to see that, right? Yeah, I did. We can see that El Chupacabra valued Oil plus Marie Curie over Bill Gates plus computers, which, on one hand, I mean, maybe, I guess I understand it from one perspective, right? Because, El Chupacabra will have as much rock income as they would have had with Bill Gates because they have the Oil. So the difference between Marie Curie and the Marie Curie Oil and Bill Gates computer. So if you think about it, Marie Curie Oil is 15 rock production plus an extra 3 science from the oil mine. So that's like, so if Marie Curie gets 3 oils and like 3 alchemies, for example, that's 15 rocks and 9 science. Whereas Bill Gates' 3 computers, 3 irons would be 6. Also be 15 rocks and more science. So yeah, Bill Gates plus computers is better than Marie Curie plus oil. However, obviously El Chupacabra only has 1 lab and 3 mines already. So El Chupacabra might have been worried that even if they went with the Bill Gates computers play, maybe they would have struggled building extra labs for Bill Gates. Whereas they already have these mines available right now that they can upgrade into oils. So that might have been why El Chupacabra made this play instead of taking Bill Gates computers. It's also true that Marie Curie will provide more culture than Bill Gates would because it's the beginning of Age 3. So she'll be providing an extra 3 culture for the entirety of Age 3. And takes patriotism instead of the urban growth, which makes sense because they have, with the oil mines, they won't need this. Although, I guess, yeah, they wanted the military action, right? Now, that being said, though, well, I did see my impact. I think I wanted to reveal the colony on my turn. Unfortunately, I reveal an economic progress which, as you can see, because I was so heavy into corruption, because I'm still on bronze mines, it ends up giving me kinda much less than it gives my opponents. So that was an unfortunate card to be revealed. But what I was saying was I was happy to take Bill Gates computers for myself, obviously. This will definitely totally solve my resource problem. And it's still definitely pretty early in H3, more than early enough for Bill Gates computers to be extremely strong. I did not do it this turn, though, because I'm actually... El Chupacabra managed... Oh, that's why El Chupacabra built the Warriors, of course. El Chupacabra wanted to time me in strength so that I couldn't use Catherine's ability this turn. So I did want to wait on Bill Gates. As we can see, I will have better things to do, or other things to do this turn other than upgrade computers anyway. So we'll wait one turn to play the Bill Gates. I still think he's definitely worth it when I get him plus computers this early into H3, even if I delay that a turn. Partly because I wanted this military theory. It's the one blue technology I'm missing, and I was being, you know, I'll lose this third military action when I lose Catherine, and so 3 military actions in H3, kind of concerning. I think military theory is a strong card for me. It's also just, like I said, it will help me with impacts, as well as defending against Sakic's aggression, which is pretty important, because Sakic is a lot stronger than me right now. And with God of Corruption, I do increase my population 2 times and build 2 cavalrymen. So this gives me out of corruption. It also means that I'm not vulnerable to an aggression from Sakic anymore. So yeah, basically I delayed Bill Gates because I thought that getting extra strength to both defend against Sakic's aggression, and also I figured it was very likely that I would be stronger than El Chupacabra on my next turn, so I'd be able to use Catherine's ability. So another benefit of not playing Bill Gates this turn is I am able to potentially use Catherine's ability next turn. So that's why I decided to delay Bill Gates computers. Discard that War of Tech, and I draw an Impact of Wonders, Suitable Impact, as well as a militarized army, which probably with 4 cavalrymen already, like maybe if I had drawn this earlier, I would have planned for it differently, but with 4 cavalrymen already, might be a little hard to get a lot of use out of this. But, I mean, there is another territory in the deck that I could maybe send a lot of cavalrymen out on, so maybe I'll be able to use that. We'll have a lot of rocks when I get Bill Gates going. Anyway, Sakic sees, reveals that freedom of movement. Develops a cavalryman, which lets Sakic play the second mechanized army that Sakic drew. So Sakic is at least able to get a good H3 tactic going. Maintain being the strongest by fair amount. Takes a civil service, which they will be able to play next turn. And then Air Forces, obviously important card to have. And with their last civil action, they also play an efficient upgrade. I guess they're planning on upgrading to oils next turn, maybe. I still think this is... I mean, let's see, 20, 24... Each of these upgrades costs 6, so they will at least be able to upgrade to 3 oils next turn, which maybe is still worth it. Especially with the second efficient upgrade, so... I can see the logic there. El Chupacabra takes the tanks for 3 civil actions. Definitely an important card for El Chupacabra. I mean, obviously they're being pressured militarily pretty severely right now. Also likes a revolutionary idea. They are also suffering a little bit in science. Builds a 3rd cannon, takes the reserves, fixes the happy face solution with the temples, builds a 4th cannon. Still no tactics though. I think they're 11 behind Sakic, so definitely vulnerable to an aggression, but there was probably nothing they could do about that. As for my turn, so, right, I use my political action on Catherine. Right. Because, yeah, on my political phase, I was stronger than El Chupacabra because I spent Freedom of Movement to move Cavalrymen to Alchemy. Because I'm playing Bill Gates this turn, I want 3 laps going. And so... Right, so I moved the Cavalrymen to the Alchemy so that because now, thanks to the Masonry, I have just enough rocks to upgrade 2 of these computers. So that's why I didn't move the Warriors to the Alchemy, because that would have cost rocks and I would have been able to only upgrade 1 to a computer. Anyway, so I definitely want to start getting these going now. So remaining civil actions, I did take the rockets. I mean, because another reason to move this cavalryman is I only have 3 cavalryman here, and maybe if I ship 1 or 2 off to the strategic territory, then I only have 1, which will make it a lot more reasonable for me to get this mechanized army. So I wanted the rockets in my hand to help me with that. I don't need them on the infantry because I have the riflemen. So for my last civil action, I think the urban growth could be considered, even though I have 14. I mean, I kind of have a lot I want to put my rocks into, and I will definitely use it on my lab upgrade. I think I actually do take it, yeah. As I said, I don't need them on the infantry, I don't need the per sports, I have this, I already have had those computers, so... I mean, I could increase my population, but I wouldn't be doing anything with it. So I thought that the urban growth, even though I have 14 rock income, I mean, I have a lot that I want to spend my rocks on. Military, a wonder, you know, maybe the space flight. So, I think the 4 rocks that saves me could end up being quite helpful. I do discard the impact of wonders. Yeah, I wanted to keep these 3 cards. I wanted to keep the tactic, because it's a tactic. I wanted to keep the bonus card, obviously. So, it's really just, do I want to keep this or the impact of wonders? The impact of wonders would be seedable, but I valued the war. I thought that with Bill Gates having so much, both the science and the rocks, as well as the military theory, I figured that a potential war... I mean, my culture situation, I'm still ahead of El Chupacabra in culture, but that'll change pretty soon. So, at this point, I was thinking that one potential path to victory for me could be getting a big war going against El Chupacabra. Like I said, I have the military theory, I have the H3 tactic, and so I wanted to keep the war to maintain that option. And I draw another impact of population. This is also suitable. Bonus card, and I also drew what's this tactic called again? Shock troops. Shock troops, probably the worst H3 tactic, but I am uniquely well set up for it because I have because of the heavy cavalry I've been depending on. So this is actually a very good job for me. It means that it's much easier to transition into this tactic than the mechanized army. Now, Sakich does try an aggression against me, even though they would have been guaranteed, more or less guaranteed. I mean, maybe El Chupacabra had 2 bonus cards, but El Chupacabra definitely would have had a much harder time defending than I did. But Sakich, I guess, saw me as a bigger threat and figured, well, I need an H3 bonus card to defend. I mean, now it is true that I think I drew that bonus card this turn. Yeah, so, it is true that I got lucky enough to draw this bonus card that I could defend, but Sakich also risked this knowing that I had already drawn a fair amount of cards in H3. So, Sakich would have had, like I said, a much higher chance, I think, of succeeding against El Chupacabra, but chose to try it against me instead. And I was fortunate enough to have drawn a bonus card right in time to defend that aggression. So we can keep that in mind for the end of the game, see if it would have made a difference. Anyway, Sakich plays Civil Service, and takes the Space Flight. I think with Newton Scientific Methods, Space Flight is definitely a good wonder for them to have. What I think is more questionable is what Sakich ends up doing, which is completing this right now. I kind of, honestly, don't understand the logic here. Maybe the idea was, Sakich was thinking, I'll be able to get 2 H4 wonders. So maybe Sakich took the space flight and was like thinking ahead, maybe I'll also be able to get, say, the United Nations or the Empire State Building. But, if you're completing 2 H4 wonders when 1 is in the Red Cross, Sakich doesn't have food for the Red Cross. It's almost never possible. Maybe if you have oil mines going from the beginning of H3, or if you have a strong Bill Gates going from the beginning of H3. But Sakich does not. Sakich's oils, if they make them, which because they spent their science on the civil service, they still don't have enough science for the oil next turn. Unless there's a Cold War in the deck. Sakich maybe won't be able to play oils next turn either, so they definitely will not have enough resources to get a second wonder. So I think if Sakich was doing it this way, Sakich shouldn't have built the wonder this turn. because obviously the longer, not only are you spending rocks earlier instead of spending them on your civilization, but Sakach also would have gotten more culture from the space flight later if they had waited. So I think I do kind of struggle to see the logic behind this, to be frank. They do take the mechanized agriculture there, which will definitely be a very helpful card for them. Chupacabra Seeds reveals developed territory, so I guess probably Sakach suited that, and that's one reason why they were comfortable taking the satellites. However, neither I nor Sakach wins it. Actually, Chupacabra does. Kind of a reversal. Chupacabra puts a ton of army into that, so maybe we can guess that they have a plan. And their plan is to copy the mechanized army tactic that Sakach played. So that makes sense. They don't need the swordsman anymore for the mechanized army. Now they are the second strongest. They upgrade a second mine, take a multimedia, and reserves. They could have played this reserves to upgrade the third mine instead of taking this copy. So I think that probably would have been better than taking this reserves. They also take an engineering genius, probably planning on getting maybe the United Nations. It was my turn, so I seeded the wonder I wanted. I think I knew, yeah, so I knew this was strategic territory, so I wanted it revealed on my turn to give me the best chance at winning it. Unfortunately, Sakach still wins it, for only a warrior and a bonus card, so that's good for them. At least I am able to finish upgrading my labs. Now, for the rest of my turn, I do need to worry about aggressions, obviously, even kind of from El Chupacabra at this point, especially because Sakach played the aggression against me last turn. That means my opponents are probably aware that I likely don't have any bonus cards. So I really need to pump my strength so that I'm not vulnerable to another aggression. And the best way to do that is to play the shock troops. Last turn, to defend against the aggression, I did play my mechanized army because I was planning on doing shock troops instead. That still leaves me pretty vulnerable, though. But after I play the military theory, now I'm not vulnerable anymore. So I think these plays are pretty forced so that I'm not vulnerable to an aggression. So the question is what to spend my last 3 civil actions on. I could potentially consider the Red Cross, but I think that I'll need that food too much to increase my population. Like, Sakach could still push strength. I might want to build urban buildings or something. So I don't think the Red Cross is good. I also think I end up just increasing the population twice. So yeah, the question is which of these cards I might want if I'm not taking Red Cross. Revolutionary idea, maybe, at least maybe to cut it from Sakach, but on the other hand, I have a lot of science income, obviously. Sakach got the space flight, so revolutionary idea. This is a rare situation where it might not actually be that good for me. Democracy could definitely be good. I will have the science for it. Communism could also be good if I'm thinking of maybe going in a more military direction, although right now it's looking less likely I'll be able to push military. I didn't get the first copy of Air Forces. El Chupacabra plays before me, so they will probably get the second copy of Air Forces. So if I don't have Air Forces, if I'm depending on shock troops, probably an aggressive war isn't going to happen. So democracy, I think, is better than communism here. Efficient upgrade, also not good. I might not upgrade. I probably won't upgrade a building again this game. I don't need these military techs now that I'm on shock troops. Endowment of the arts, probably, I mean, maybe, but probably not. Also not worth 3 civil actions. So I think I just wanted the democracy, and I increased my population. Like I said, the revolutionary idea could definitely still be good, especially if I'm putting science into democracy, and also as a little bit of a hate draft against Sakach. So maybe I should have taken this revolutionary idea instead of popping twice. But I think I was also a little worried about my civil action situation. It's a little close. I mean, but it's true that I will be spending a lot of science on the democracy. So yeah, I think the revolutionary idea would have been better after all. But I do build a second rifleman, just so that it's kind of free, right? I mean, I'm still drawing 3 cards, and it also makes me strongest, which is nice. I don't know if one of these, or both of these could be strength events. I draw another war, another tactic that I I mean, maybe could use, but probably not. And a peace treaty. No impacts, unfortunately. That was sad. Suckish does not use their political action. Instead, upgrades 2 farms, takes Churchill, plays him, destroys a lab to instead build a cannon, and upgrade a 2nd Knight to Cavalryman. Takes that endowment for 3 civil actions. Expensive endowment, but perhaps none of the... I guess none of the other cards were really that good for Suckich, except that revolutionary idea. Right. Chupacabra builds another cannon, destroys a mine to build another tanks. Yeah, that makes sense. The lab is giving them 2 strength from Rikuri. Guess they figured they didn't need that extra. I mean, they have oils going anyway, and since they're putting resources into doing this, they probably weren't upgrading that. It would have been a late oil upgrade anyway, so I get it. They do take the United Nations and an efficient upgrade. Notably, not sure what the plan is for this. Maybe selective breedings, although that's going to be discarded by their next turn. So, they are planning these selective breedings. Okay, that makes sense then. Right. I offer a peace treaty to Suckich. I mean, I didn't, I'm not in a position to war, so I had nothing else better to do with my political action, and I figured that, first of all, I thought that El Chupacabra was currently a bigger threat. So, Suckich, here's the thing, right? Suckich is not in a position to get a big war going, because they, Suckich actually mentioned in the chat that they kinda didn't realize that they were missing 1 military action to do a big war, because they need 5 military actions to declare a war and build 2 air forces. The Suckich is also missing rocks for 2 air forces too, so I think they would have needed to have a... I guess if they had maybe like not upgraded these farms, yeah, then they could have had enough rocks if they had another military action to go for the war. They really needed one of these patriotisms, I think, to get a war going. Anyway, because Suckich isn't really in a position to get a big war going for that reason, they only have the military actions on the rocks for 1 air force. I figured that El Chupacabra was a bigger threat to me in terms of winning the game. So that's why I offered the peace treaty to Suckich. I also figured that whether Suckich accepted it or rejected it would give me a sign of what their plans are. If they accepted it, obviously, then I could maybe focus on doing peaceful things. But since they rejected it, I figured, oh, Suckich rejected it. Looks like they're thinking of maybe being aggressive against me, which means that I need to fix my strength situation more, which I do. Well, after taking the Empire State Building, which Empire State Building always pairs well with Bill Gates because it gives you so much rocks and science. So it will, at the very least, give me 18 culture, because I will definitely have more resource production and science production than my opponents. Maybe it'll give me 27 if I can get more strength from them as well. A little doubtful, but perhaps possible. More than that, it's not looking like I'll probably be able to challenge for culture. Definitely not food. Maybe culture, because I think I'll be taking the movies. I might be able to challenge. And if I play the democracy. I do play the democracy. And I take reserves. Even with Bill Gates, I mean, since I'm going to be spending 17 on this Empire State Building, I could definitely use, and if I want to build movies, could definitely use as many rocks as I can get. Democracy, I think, makes sense. There's nothing else I'm going to use that science on this turn. And as for my last civil action, I destroy a farm to build another cavalryman, so that I am safe from an aggression. I mean, potentially, if I don't draw bonus cards, I could get a double aggression from Suckich and El Chupacabra, but I figured that Suckich probably wasn't going to play an aggression on me that I would for sure be able to defend, just on the chance that El Chupacabra might be able to do a second aggression against me. So I felt pretty comfortable, and I felt pretty safe right now. I drew an armed intervention, another tactic, and an impact of agriculture, which is not a suitable impact for me. So a little unfortunate impact draws. H4 begins. Sakich Seeds reveals vast territory. This was also probably seeded by Sakich. I did not bet at all on it because it would be a literally useless card for me at this point because the last turn is going to be my final turn. Sakich ends up winning it for 1 Cavalryman. Increases the population, plays a revolutionary idea, in order to play an Air Force and build 1, so they're strongest again. Plays the Dominate the Arts for 6 culture, takes another revolutionary idea, and a patriotism, and a military theory, a military build-up. Kind of strongly suggesting that this was an impact of strength, I think. Now, El Chupacabra does indeed try an aggression against me. I guess just to leech cards out of my hand at this point. So if Sakich had aggressed against me, this would have succeeded. But they didn't. So El Chupacabra built a multimedia, upgrades a farm with the efficient upgrades, takes yellow cards as well as a mechanized agriculture, and playing reserves for rocks. Last in the game. This is a very bad impact for me, so I have nothing better to do than to try the peace treaty again at this point. Because Sakich wasn't able to get a good war going, El Chupacabra is definitely ahead, not that far ahead of Sakich, but still ahead enough that I figured that El Chupacabra was my bigger threat in winning the game. So I offered it to Sakich, but they rejected it again. Which meant that they probably have an aggression they're thinking of using against me, so I need to make sure I'm protected against that. Now, I can play reserves for food to increase my population 1 last time. I also want to do that because it would give me an extra 2 culture from the impact of population I seeded previously. It also means... But another reason to do it is because after I build another cavalryman, I will have two tactics, meaning that I'm strongest, meaning the Empire State Building will indeed give me... Oh, sorry, I said 27. I thought it was a 4... I forgot exactly how much. It's a 3-player game, so each one gives you 8. So I get 24 culture from the Empire State Building, which is pretty good. I also destroy... I finally destroy that 4th mine I built for another lab. There is a little bit of a question of what to do with this. You know, I could potentially build an arena in case of Impact of Happiness. I could potentially build a farm in case of Impact of Balance. So depending on what my opponent seeded, like something else with this would have been better. Impact of Competition too with the team sports. But Impact of Balance, I thought Sakich wouldn't have seeded. A Chupacabra could seed it, but I just, instead of like doing this farm or this team sports because of a possibility of like an impact someone else seeded that I don't know about, I figured the guaranteed 1 extra culture from this because of Bill Gates was better. And I take the Air Forces and I play the rockets kind of pointlessly. Well, it helps a little. It doesn't matter which tech I played. I just want to play a tech in case someone sees impact of technology. Sakich seeds again. The refugees is revealed, so this is also a nice benefit of me being strongest. I get a 6 culture swing against El Chupacabra. Sakich plays the revolutionary idea to finally play the oil at the very end of the game. And builds a cavalryman and a 2nd Air Forces, so they're definitely strongest now. So yeah, it definitely seems that they seeded Impact of Strength. Which is fine. As long as El Chupacabra doesn't get stronger than me. El Chupacabra plays Mechanized Agriculture. Second multimedia. Builds another farm. Plays the reserves. 2 copies of reserves to finish United Nations. I'm not sure if El Chupacabra could have gotten stronger than me while finishing United Nations. If they could have, they should have considered that possibly, because it's so obvious that Sakich seeded Impact of Strength. And El Chupacabra getting more strength than me would have been a 14 culture swing against me. Anyway, El Chupacabra finishes the United Nations, doesn't have an impact to play with it though, so they just get the 12th culture from it. So we can see before the final impacts are revealed, El Chupacabra is 2 culture ahead of me, and I'm 24 culture ahead of Sakich. However, if indeed there is an impact of strength, then I will get ahead of El Chupacabra, but basically, whether or not El Chupacabra or I win depends on what impacts are in the deck. Sakich, even with the impact of strength, it's going to be pretty hard for them to get ahead of either of us, but it is probably possible with a certain set of impacts. So getting into the final set of impacts will be exciting. The first one is an impact of progress. This I was, when I saw this, I was like, okay, I'm definitely winning this game, because we can see it gives me 10 more culture than El Chupacabra does. This was definitely seeded by Sakach, as we can see, because Sakach also gets 20 culture from it. But this is obviously a very powerful impact for me, and along with potentially impact of strength, I thought that I was very likely to win at this point. This is the impact of harmony I seeded. I ended up... oh, that's another reason to build the lab instead of, say, a farm, because that gives me 16 from the impact of harmony, which is more than either of my opponents. Next is an impact of culture. This presumably was seeded by El Chupacabra, so that catches them up more to me. They're only 5 behind. But the next one is an impact of industry, so this actually pushes them ahead of me, although I still have the Bill Gates bonus coming. But the last one, there actually is no impact of strength, notably, so that's a little maybe surprising given how Sakach played. Maybe Sakach thought I could have seeded the impact of strength. Either way, though, it's the impact of population that I seeded that I get more than both of my opponents do, and after the Bill Gates bonus, I end up beating El Chupacabra by 14 culture. So we can see that even if Sakach had played the aggression of military intervention differently, it wouldn't have made a difference. This was a stressful game. I think that my early game was strong, obviously. Getting Sun Tzu into heavy cavalry into Genghis Khan is definitely pretty fortunate. Although Sakach getting Jan Žižka with Napoleonic army early in Age 2 kind of threatened me back a lot. But still, I think that the early game looked well, but definitely that turn in Age 2 when the Dark Ages hit me just in time that I had my hand full, so I wasn't able to take the coal. That was the key turn in this game for me, because that was like a really bad turn and I had to figure out what was the best of my bad options. And in the end, I ended up deciding on taking that with nationalism and putting the 4th mine. And I think that set of decisions kind of won me the game, because even though my situation was so bad at the Dark Ages, I really do think in retrospect I found the best way to respond to that event and to the situation I found myself in. While I didn't make mistakes earlier to make myself vulnerable to that position, I am happy with how I played after that happened. And I think, as for Age 3, I think what let me win the game was Bill Gates computers. I mean, Bill Gates computers is just such a powerful combination. I think that El Chupacabra letting me have it was probably not wrong. Even if they took Marie Curie plus oil, which I still think... I understand Marie Curie plus oil because they only had 1 lab. But if they took Marie Curie instead of Bill Gates, I think they still should have taken the computers, or found a turn that let them have the computers. Just because letting me have Bill Gates computers so easily is just, it's so strong. And it even fixed my rock situation, which was already looking decent after the Suez Canal that I got going. So, Bill Gates definitely carried me to this victory, I think. Especially with the Empire State building in the deck, so... I'm pretty happy with how I played Age 3 overall. Maybe my opponents made a few mistakes in Age 3 that I was able to capitalize on. But that's part of the game as well. And so, overall, pretty happy with how I played, especially considering just how bad that Dark Ages was for me. Now we can take a quick look at the standings. As we can see, by the time I took the screenshot, the first 2-player game had actually been finished in the group. El Chupacabra defeated DB Starman. I'm kind of the sloth in the group. It's also partly a time zone thing, but I'm also kind of the sloth in the group. Because El Chupacabra beat DB Starman in the 2-player game, it's looking like they may be my main competition to finishing first in the group, although DB Starman can definitely still catch up. But that victory in that 3-player game definitely helps me out a lot, puts me in a much better position to compete to winning the group. I'm only 1.5 behind DB Starman with 1 game less to play, 7.5 behind El Chupacabra with 2 less games played. So definitely if I continue doing well in the remaining 5 games in the group, I can absolutely finish first. But, that's still a lot of games played. We saw from the previous games that my opponents are all strong, so it's going to be challenging to play catch-up, always challenging to play catch-up, but this victory in that 3-player game is the first step. So we'll see in future videos if I can keep that up. As always, please leave a comment if you have any suggestions or constructive criticism on either my play or my video making. And I hope you enjoy this video, and I hope to see you in the next one too.